Well, as we've reported, a memorial service for Jett Travolta will be held today. Since his death, there have been many questions about the Church of Scientology and what it teaches about treating illnesses. We're joined by Tommy Davis, a spokesman for the church. Tommy, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, what are the biggest misconceptions you've heard in this last week about Scientology since this story?
Sure, yeah. I think really the biggest is really the thing you have to understand is Scientologists, like many people, like anybody, we go to doctors. If somebody's sick, some sort of physical ailment, we go to the doctor, you get a prescription, you know, whatever the course of treatment that would be recommended by a doctor, you're going to do that. And, you know, it's very important. It's not, I mean, it's actually something that's mandatory from the church's viewpoint. Someone has some sort of physical difficulty or problem, something's happening with them, they're ill, go to a doctor, get it checked out, find out what's going on. If it involves a prescription or whatever treatment the doctor recommends, they're going to do that.
What about psychiatric drugs?
Well, there's a difference. We're talking about a medical condition. When you have a medical condition and there's something happening with the body, there's some sort of illness going on, that's what...
But people think, you know, a medical condition can be a chemical imbalance, take antidepressants, but Scientology doesn't think that's a medical condition?
Well, I mean, that's not even a viewpoint as far as Scientologists are concerned. I mean, that's something that's really clear, you know, just even in the medical community. You have physical ailments, there's something wrong with the body, there's something happening. I mean, that can even involve, you know, malfunctions with the brain or these kinds of things, and those things are treated. Like seizures, for example, you're going to, you know, if there's an anti-seizure medication recommended by a doctor, you're going to do that.
Does the Church of Scientology acknowledge there is such a thing as autism?
You know, to the degree you have a medical condition, like there's something going on, like, you know, seizures or some sort of physical problem that's happening with the body, you know, that's going to get treated by a doctor. But the church doesn't involve itself in diagnosing or classifying medical conditions. I mean, it's just not, you know, as a church, we deal with the spirit. And, you know, in terms of bodies and the handling of physical problems, that's something, you know, for the medical community.
But will you acknowledge that autism does exist in the world? Not so much, you know, I'm not saying you'll diagnose it.
Sure.
But is there such a thing as autism in this world of Scientology?
I mean, yeah. I mean, to the degree that you have the medical community acknowledging that there is this thing called autism and that it requires treatment and doctors treat it and so on and so forth. Yeah, absolutely. I think I would go the other way from it. There's this misconception or this thing that I've certainly seen that the church doesn't, quote unquote, recognize autism. It's just not true. It's not. We don't recognize or not recognize anything. I mean, we're a church, and if you're dealing with medical conditions, that's doctors. Doctors do that. We tell Scientologists, you have something going on physically, you have to go to a doctor. You have to get that properly treated.
Explain to me what the Church of Scientology believes will happen to Jett now, and what the belief is with his spirit, what happens to him, all that.
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to understand that is in Scientology, you, the individual, are an immortal spiritual being. In other words,
immortal or
immortal.
Immortal. So
like
I
living
live forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spiritual being. Well, you don't. It's like you don't have a soul or a spirit. You are an immortal spiritual being. That is who you are. So you've lived before, you'll live again. You know, the concept of past lives, and it's really in the older. You know, Asian sense in terms of that, in terms of Buddhism or Hinduism. Yeah, different from reincarnation because that gets into, you know, what you're going to come back as. I mean, it's really a much simpler process. You know, you inhabit a body, but you aren't your body. So as a spiritual being, you're gonna come back in a new body. You've had lives before, you'll have lives in the future.
Okay, so you believe Jett will come back. If he comes back in someone else's body, will it be someone that the Travoltas know? What's the belief there?
Oh, it would never be anything so specific. Really the point is as a general rule, and this would apply to anybody. If you go back to that basic idea that the individual himself or herself is an immortal spiritual being, you're living lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and that's your existence, you know, through time. So when the body dies, you would go and pick up a new body, really, to sort of put it in a simple sense, and you know, whatever or whoever that may be.
And what is a Scientology funeral like?
It's pretty conventional in terms of what most people would be familiar with a funeral. You have a minister, you know, an ordained Scientology minister that would conduct, you know, the service, and often family or friends will talk and about the person who's passed away. You could have a eulogy, you know, these kinds of things.
Will you see a lot of people grieving and crying, or does that defeat the purpose of what you believe in, that they're not really dead?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you know, whenever anyone experiences a loss, I mean, it's a huge emotional loss for anyone to be gone, and to the degree, I mean, of course there's solace in the concept that the person themselves and who they are as a person that you know is never gone, and so to that degree, in a Scientology funeral service, it's really a celebration of the person's life and acknowledging them for the life lived and wishing them well in their next. So it's really a celebration of their life. But I mean,
but crying would
of course. I mean, anyone's going to grieve with that kind of loss, and anyone would. You know.
And finally, have you talked to the Travoltas, and how are they doing?
Well, yes, and they're doing great. But you know, I think it's really, this is a time for them and their family and their friends, and you know, like anyone, you know, we would wish them well and
right.
hope
So
they,
what would
you know,
the proper thing be to say? You know, we've all interviewed John Travolta. We love him. Like, do you say, "I'm so sorry for your loss," or like, what would be the appropriate thing to say? Like, he goes on. I don't know.
Sure. No, what you just said, of course. Yeah. For you know, for any Scientologist, it's really no different than anyone else in that, you know, anyone grieves the loss of a loved one or a friend, or, you know, anyone that they know, and
so it is a loss.
Sure, of course.
But
of course,
Jett will live on later in someone else's body, but we don't know who and when.
Yeah, I mean, to that degree, exactly. I mean, I think just from a simpler concept, you know, Scientologists are like anybody else. You know, you have your family and you have your loved ones, and to the degree that they're there with you, you know, that's a wonderful thing. And when they're gone and they're not around anymore, you know, that's a loss. But you know, I think as a general rule, people the world over definitely, you know, have the concept that we're spiritual beings and that we have a future, and there's life down the road, and there's more to look forward to no matter what, and we know, you know, that our loved ones are always with us in some way.
Tommy Davis, thank you for explaining
Absolutely.
a lot. I had a lot of questions.
Yeah, no problem,
right,
Julie.
Thanks for coming.
Real pleasure to meet you.
Same here.